Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and I am doing the Generally Speaking book tag. It was created by Criminali. There are 7 prompts. Prompt number 1, a horrifying book that isn't horror. Well, I do read horror books, but I rarely, if ever, get scared by a horror novel. Vampires don't scare me, ghosts don't scare me, cosmic creatures from outer space don't scare me. What scares me is other people. So I wanted to pick a book about people that scare me. And the book is Jesus and John Wayne, How White Evangelicals Corrupted and Fractured a Nation by Kristin And this is a book about, of course, white Christian nationals, evangelicals. And to cut it down to a very simple premise, a lot of these evangelicals have very strong beliefs. They think their religion is the correct religion and the only correct religion. It is almost an antithesis of maybe Midrash, where a lot of people are reading about different religions and trying to glean knowledge from those different religions. These people believe that their religion is the only correct one. And it is rather nutty and very misogynistic. Their ideal man is John Wayne, and they think that Jesus Christ would be a man like a John Wayne. And they very much want you to be part of their religion. And that scares the bejesus out of me, because I am not part of their religion and have absolutely no interest in belonging to one of their churches. So we'll see how well that goes. Prompt number 2, a book with a terrible crime that isn't a crime novel. I'm going to pick a classic, Crime and Punishment by Fydor Dosteoevsky. And this is, of course, about a young man who thinks he is above the rest of humanity, and it would be perfectly legitimate for him to murder an old woman and take her money and use it for himself. And this is the beginning of the book, so this is not much of a spoiler. So right away, the reader sees the crime, knows who did the crime, and on the surface, why Raskolnikov did the crime. And it is an exploration into the psychology of Raskolnikov and how he deals with the aftermath of his crime. So a horrible crime has been committed, but it is no way a crime novel. A prompt number 3, a book about love that isn't a romance. I'm going to pick Angle of Repose by Wallace Stegner. This book has 2 timelines. One is an author, not really Wallace Stegner, but an author of his caliber and type. And he is writing a book about his grandmother. And he admires his grandmother greatly. So it is a love for his grandmother. And then the story of his grandmother, who basically lived out in the Old West. And she has quite a love relationship with her husband. And it is a story of a marriage that can get complicated and beautiful at the same time. And this is just a magnificent novel. Book prompt number 4, a book with a puzzle that isn't a mystery. I am going to say A Void by Georges Perec. It is one of my favorite books. It is a lipogram. It is, on the surface, it's a mystery book. But that is the author just playing with genre and playing with the reader. Because really, the book is about the writing, because he writes that book without the letter E. And it's using the language and words that you can find without using the letter E. And it was originally written in French and was translated into English. The English translation is really just more of an inspired from the French. There's a lot of liberal changes that the translator had to go through to make this work exist in English without using the letter E. Prompt number 5, a book with magic that isn't a fantasy. I'm going to pick The Flame Alphabet by Ben Marcus. And this is a story where children's language, when children speak, their parents die by listening to their children talking, which is, of course, magical. But it is not the story of magic. It is a way the author is getting across an allegory. He wants to say how parents interact with their children. And it's a fascinating, strange book. But if you look on someplace like Goodreads, it gets horrible ratings. Last time I checked a few years ago, the main review was from a woman who gave it 1 star. And she gave it 1 star because she said this was the worst thriller she had ever read in her life. And I can understand why she said that, but she made a huge mistake. The book is not a thriller. Saying that book is the worst thriller she had ever read is like saying going to an Italian restaurant, ordering chicken marsala, and saying, this is the worst bacon cheeseburger that I've ever read. It is just not a thriller. It is an exploration into ideas. And I really loved it. And it is kind of creepy to think about children talking and that kills their parents. And I can highly recommend that book. Prompt number 6, a book that thrilled you that isn't a thriller. I am going to go with Means of Ascent, The Years of Lyndon Johnson by Robert A. Caro. And this is the 2nd volume in a projected 5-volume work. There's currently 4 volumes published. And the reason I say it is thrilling is because in this 2nd volume, it talks about how Lyndon Johnson won his race for the Senate. So it is all about elections and vote counting. And you think that would be boring, but it was absolutely riveting. I listened to it as an audiobook, and I just could not stop listening. It was just that exciting to hear about voting returns. And it's just not voting returns. The author made a good case that Lyndon Johnson stole that election. And this is a real stealing of election, not this fake election stealing that people talk about nowadays. They have actual documented evidence that that stealing probably occurred. And one of the issues is that in a precinct, they said after the votes were counted that they discovered another box of ballots. And it was within the time frame that you can discover boxes of ballots. But the people of this town conveniently voted in alphabetical order. Kind of suspicious there. And some records that would clarify that mysteriously disappeared. You know, if you're going to steal an election, there's going to be some evidence. And Robert A. Caro had evidence. And it is absolutely thrilling. Prompt number 7. A book with science that isn't science fiction. So how am I going to interpret this? When you use science, is it science fiction? Yes and no. There is a very famous quote from Arthur C. Clarke that goes something along the lines of this. a significantly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And a lot of science fiction authors take that to heart too closely. I don't think Arthur C. Clarke would have thought of it that way. He would know that if you had science, let's just pick a helicopter gunship, and if you could somehow bring it back in time to the days of Julius Caesar when he's crossing the Rubicon, and you decided to machine gun his army down, they would interpret that as magic from the gods. But of course, it is not magic, because we all understand helicopter gunships, even though Julius Caesar could not understand them. But sometimes authors create a technology and say, it's just so advanced, it just looks like magic to us. But they are actually, in my opinion, participating in fantasy when they do that. If they do not somehow glean that it could be science and that's just not making something up that they can't understand, then they are really not participating in science. It's fantasy. And one book I read that was really atrocious, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to be a little bit cruel because it was a self-published book back in 2008. And it's just an author that ripped off a draft and threw it out there. But he had a bit of science, a doomsday weapon. And the book was Right Ascension by David Derrico. And this doomsday weapon was incredibly powerful. It could kill entire galaxies if you pointed. So if you lived in a galaxy away from the Milky Way and pointed this weapon to us, every planet, every sun would be destroyed. And that's just magic. There is no power in the universe that could do that. It's pure magical thinking. And it was a terrible book. But that is the Generally Speaking book tag. And who do I tag in this? I think a lot of people have been tagged, but let me try to think of 3 people. I'm going to do Jim at Books, Reading, and Stuff. I'm going to do Book Time with Elvis and Book Time with Ryan. I hope you've enjoyed this little tag and have a good day. Goodbye.